welcome. It's 9 November. Sorry, I'm eating some candy. It's 85 years ago. We had this Kristallnacht in Germany, in Nazi Germany. It's 7:30. So I think I like to read about it. We have this war in Israel now. We have all this war in Israel and Gaza. But let's read about it. I need a minute to get to my bed.
Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht destroyed building. Destroyed Fasanenstraße synagogue in Berlin, location Nazi Germany, then including Austria and the Sudetenland. Free City of Danzig, date 9-10 of November, 1938, 85 years 0 days ago. Target Jews, attack type pogrom, purge, looting, arson, mass arrests, homicide, kidnapping, deaths 91 plus, perpetrators Sturmabteilung, SA, stormtroopers Skugstaffel, SS, Hitler Youth, German civilians, motive assassination of Ernst vom Rath, antisemitism. Kristallnacht, German pronunciation, Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, also called November Pogrom, German November Pogrom, pronounced novm.b.poem, 1, 2, was a pogrom against Jews carried out by the Nazi Party's Sturmabteilung, SA, paramilitary, and Skugstaffel, SS, paramilitary forces, along with some participation from the Hitler Youth and German civilians throughout Nazi Germany on 9-10 of November, 1938. The German authorities looked on without intervening. 3. The name Kristallnacht, literally crystal night, comes from shards of broken glass that littered the streets after the windows of Jewish-owned stores, buildings, and synagogues were smashed. The pretext for the attacks was the assassination of the German diplomat Ernst vom Rath, by Herschel Greenspan, a 17-year-old German-born Polish Jew living in Paris. Jewish homes, hospitals and schools were ransacked as attackers demolished buildings with sledgehammers. 5. Rioters destroyed 267 synagogues throughout Germany, Austria, and the Sudetenland. 6. Over 7,000 Jewish businesses were damaged or destroyed. 7, 8, and 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and incarcerated in concentration camps. 9. British historian Martin Gilbert wrote that no event in the history of German Jews between 1933 and 1945 was so idly reported as it was happening, and the accounts from foreign journalists working in Germany drew worldwide attention. 5. The Times of London observed on the 11th of November, 1938, no foreign propagandist bent upon blackening Germany before the world could outdo the tale of burnings and beatings, of blackguardly assaults on defenseless and innocent people, which disgraced that country yesterday. 10. Estimates of fatalities caused by the attacks have varied. Early reports estimated that 91 Jews had been murdered. A modern analysis of German scholarly sources puts the figure much higher, when deaths from post-arrest maltreatment and subsequent suicides are included. The death toll reaches the hundreds, with Richard J. Evans estimating 638 deaths by suicide. 11. Historians view Kristallnacht as a prelude to the final solution and the murder of 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. 12. Background. Early Nazi persecutions. In the 1920s, most German Jews were fully integrated into the country's society as citizens. They served in the army and navy and contributed to every field of German business, science and culture. 13. Conditions for German Jews began to worsen after the appointment of Adolf Hitler, the Austrian-born leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, as Chancellor of Germany on the 30th of January, 1933, and the Enabling Act, implemented the 23rd of March, 1933, which enabled the assumption of power by Hitler after the Reichstag fire of the 27th of February 1933. 14. 15. From its inception, Hitler's regime quickly moved to introduce anti-Jewish policies. Nazi propaganda alienated the 500,000 Jews who were living in Germany at that time. They accounted for only 0.86% of Germany's entire population. It also framed them as an enemy which was responsible for Germany's defeat in the First World War as well as for the economic disasters which subsequently occurred in Germany, such as the 1920s hyperinflation and the subsequent Great Depression. 16. Beginning in 1933, the German government enacted a series of anti-Jewish laws which restricted the rights of German Jews to earn a living, their right to enjoy full citizenship and their right to gain an education, including the law for the restoration of the professional civil service of the 7th of April 1933 which forbade Jews from working in the civil service. 17. The subsequent 1935 Nuremberg laws stripped German Jews of their citizenship and prohibited Jews from marrying non-Jewish Germans. These laws resulted in the exclusion and alienation of Jews from German social and political life. 18. Many sought asylum abroad, hundreds of thousands emigrated, but as Chaim Weizmann wrote in 1936, few all seemed to be divided into two parts: those places where the Jews could not live and those where they could not enter. 19. The International Evian Conference on the 6th of July, 1938 addressed the issue of Jewish and Romani immigration to other countries. By the time the conference took place, more than 250,000 Jews had fled from Germany and Austria, which had been annexed by Germany in March 1938. More than 300,000 German and Austrian Jews continued to seek refuge and asylum from oppression. As the number of Jews and Romani wanting to leave increased, the restrictions against them grew, with many countries tightening their rules for admission. By 1938, Germany had entered a new radical phase in anti-Semitic activity. 20. Some historians believe that the Nazi government had been contemplating a planned outbreak of violence against the Jews and were waiting for an appropriate provocation. There is evidence of this planning dating back to 1937. 21. In a 1997 interview, the German historian Hans Mommsen claimed that a major motive for the pogrom was the desire of the Gauleiters of the Reichstag to seize Jewish property and businesses. 22. Mommsen stated the need for money by the party organization stemmed from the fact that Franz Xaver Schwarz, the party treasurer, kept the local and regional organizations of the party short of money. In the fall of 1938, the increased pressure on Jewish property nourished the party's ambition, especially since Joel Maskert had been ousted as Reich Minister for Economics. This, however, was only one aspect of the origin of the November 1938 pogrom. The Polish government threatened to extradite all Jews who were Polish citizens but would stay in Germany, thus creating a burden of responsibility on the German side. The immediate reaction by the Gestapo was to push the Polish Jews 16,000 persons over the borderline, but this measure failed due to the stubbornness of the Polish customs officers. The loss of prestige as a result of this abortive operation called for some sort of compensation. Thus, the overreaction to Herschel Greenspan's attempt against the diplomat Ernst von Rath came into being and led to the November pogrom. The background of the pogrom was signified by a sharp cleavage of interests between the different agencies of party and state. While the Nazi Party was interested in improving its financial strength on the regional and local level by taking over Jewish property, Hermann Göring, in charge of the four-year plan, hoped to acquire access to foreign currency in order to pay for the import of urgently needed raw material. Heydrich and Himmler were interested in fostering Jewish emigration. 22. In February 1938, the leadership of the Zionist movement in the British Mandate of Palestine wrote that according to a very reliable private source, one which can be traced back to the highest echelons of the SS leadership, there was an intention to carry out a genuine and dramatic pogrom in Germany on a large scale in the near future. 23. Polish Jews expelled from Germany in late October 1938. Expulsion of Polish Jews in Germany. In August 1938, German authorities announced that asylum permits for foreigners were being cancelled and would have to be renewed. This included German-born Jews of foreign citizenship. Poland stated that it would renounce citizenship rights of Polish Jews living abroad for at least 5 years after the end of October, effectively making them stateless. 24. In the so-called Poland action, more than 12,000 Polish Jews, among them the philosopher and theologian Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and future literary critic Marcel Rekranicki, were expelled from Germany on 28 October 1938, on Hitler's orders. They were ordered to leave their homes in a single night and were allowed only one suitcase per person to carry their belongings. As Jews were taken away, their remaining possessions were seized as loot both by Nazi authorities and by neighbors. The deportees were taken from their homes to railway stations and were put on trains to the Polish border, where Polish border guards sent them back into Germany. This stalemate continued for days in the pouring rain, with the Jews marching without food or shelter between the borders. 25. 4,000 were granted entry into Poland, but the remaining 8,000 were forced to stay at the border. They waited there in harsh conditions to be allowed to enter Poland. A British newspaper told its readers that hundreds are reported to be lying about, penniless and deserted, in little villages along the frontier near where they had been driven out by the Gestapo and left. 26. Conditions in the refugee camps were so bad that some actually tried to escape back into Germany and were shot, recalled a British woman who was sent to help those who had been expelled. 27. Shooting of the Wrath. Among those expelled was the family of Sendel and Riva Greenspan, Polish Jews who had emigrated to Germany in 1911 and settled in Hanover, Germany. At the trial of Adolf Eichmann in 1961, Sendel Greenspan recounted the events of their deportation from Hanover on the night of the 27th of October, 1938. They took us in police trucks, in prisoners' lorries, about 20 men in each truck, and they took us to the Herschel Greenspan, 7 November 1938 Ernst von Rath railway station. The streets were full of people shouting, Juden roars. Auf nach Palästina. Jews out, out to Palestine. 28. Their 17-year-old son Herschel was living in Paris with an uncle. 12. Herschel received a postcard from his family from the Polish border, describing the family's expulsion. No one told us what was up, but we realized this was going to be the end. We haven't a penny. Could you send us something? 29. He received the postcard on the 3rd of November 1938. On the morning of Monday, the 7th of November 1938, he purchased a revolver and a box of bullets, then went to the German embassy and asked to see an embassy official. After he was taken to the office of Nazi diplomat Ernst von Rath, Greenspan fired 5 bullets at von Rath, 2 of which hit him in the abdomen. Von Rath was a professional diplomat with the Foreign Office who expressed anti-Nazi sympathies, largely based on the Nazis' treatment of the Jews, and was under Gestapo investigation for being politically unreliable. 30. However, he also argued that the anti-Semitic laws were necessary to allow the Volksgemeinschaft to flourish. 31. Greenspan made no attempt to escape the French police and freely confessed to the shooting. In his pocket, he carried a postcard to his parents with the message, "May God forgive me. I must protest so that the holy world hears my protest, and that I will do." It is widely assumed that the assassination was politically motivated, but historian Hans-Jürgen Doscher says the shooting may have been the result of a homosexual love affair gone wrong, and that Greenspan and von Rath had become intimate after they met in Le Boeuf-sur-le-Toit, which was a popular meeting place for gay men at the time. 32. The next day, the German government retaliated, barring Jewish children from German state elementary schools, indefinitely suspending Jewish cultural activities, and putting a halt to the publication of Jewish newspapers and magazines, including the 3 national German Jewish newspapers. A newspaper in Britain described the last move, which cut off the Jewish populace from their leaders, as intended to disrupt the Jewish community and rob it of the last frail ties which hold it together. 16. Their rights as citizens had been stripped. 33. One of the first legal measures issued was an order by Heinrich Himmler, commander of all German police, forbidding Jews to possess any weapons whatsoever and imposing a penalty of 20 years confinement in a concentration camp upon every Jew found in possession of a weapon hereafter. 34. Pogrom. Death of Ernst von Rath. Ernst von Rath died of his wounds on the 9th of November, 1938. Word of his death reached Hitler that evening while he was with several key members of the Nazi Party at a dinner commemorating the 1923 Beer Hall Putsch. After intense discussions, Hitler left the assembly abruptly without giving his usual address. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels delivered the speech, in his place, and said that the Führer has decided that demonstrations should not be prepared or organized by the party, but insofar as they erupt spontaneously, they are not to be hampered. 35. The chief party judge Walter Buch later stated that the message was clear. With these words, Goebbels had commanded the party leaders to organize a pogrom. 36. Some leading party officials disagreed with Goebbels' actions, fearing the diplomatic crisis it would provoke. Heinrich Himmler wrote, "I suppose that it is Goebbels' megalomania and stupidity which are responsible for starting this operation now, in a particularly difficult diplomatic situation." 37. The Israeli historian Saul Friedlander believes that Goebbels had personal reasons for wanting to bring about Kristallnacht. Goebbels had recently suffered humiliation for the ineffectiveness of his propaganda campaign during the Sudan crisis, and was in some disgrace over an affair with a Czech actress, Lidia Barova. Goebbels needed a chance to improve his standing in the eyes of Hitler. At 1:20 a.m. on 10 November 1938, Reinhard Heydrich sent an urgent secret telegram to the Sicherheitspolizei, Security Police, SIPO, and the Sturmabteilung, SA, containing instructions regarding the riots. This included guidelines for the protection of foreigners and non-Jewish businesses and property. Police were instructed not to interfere with the riots unless the guidelines were violated. Police were also instructed to seize Jewish archives from synagogues and community offices, and to arrest and detain healthy male Jews, who are not too old, for eventual transfer to label concentration camps. 38. Heinrich Müller, in a message to SA and SS commanders, stated the most extreme measures were to be taken against Jewish people. 39. Riots and Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht, shop damage in Magdeburg beginning on November